Hello and welcome to the Leverage Podcast. This is Paul Richard, and I am really glad to have a special guest today, Lisa Armstrong, with me. We've been friends for a couple of years, and we've worked together in business. And I'd like to introduce you, Lisa. Give us a little bit of background on yourself, and your business is called Launchpad Leadership.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about what your background is in that leadership area.
Yeah. So thanks so much for having me, Paul. I really appreciate it. So, yes, my name's Lisa Armstrong, and my company is Launchpad Leadership. And really, my background is heavily focused kind of in three areas that really all tie together. I started my career in sales, so I have a lot of experience in selling many different things. But very quickly, I found that I had a passion for training. And so right away, I became a field trainer at the first company I worked for, which was a pharmaceutical company, and found a passion for helping coach and train people. And that really kind of led into a leadership development focus where I really started to help educate myself and others on some solid foundational leadership principles. And throughout my 18 years in pharmaceuticals and then 9 years in software, I was really able to hone those skills in different areas. So about 7 months ago, I decided it was time for me to go out on my own and have really been able with Launchpad Leadership to take everything I learned in the corporate world from years and years of doing sales training, leadership development, people development of all kinds, and turn that into my new company, which I'm really passionate about.
One of the things you had mentioned to me previously was the whole thing of emotional intelligence, right? And can you define that, first of all? And for those of us on the podcast that don't know what that exactly means, and can you take us through a little bit of a tour of how you approach that in the corporate world, and then, what you're seeing for results?
Yeah, no, great question. So I think a very simple definition for emotional intelligence is our ability to have awareness of ourselves and management of our own emotions, but also the ability to effectively read and connect with other people. I think that's just a really simple way to define it. And one of the reasons I'm so passionate about it is because, we live in a world today where AI and technology is doing a lot of things. It's changing very quickly, it's adapting very quickly. And I know there's a lot of good conversation out there about what jobs AI might replace. I like to look at the conversation a little bit different, less about what jobs is AI going to replace, but what skills do we need to have in the workplace to set ourselves apart, knowing that AI is going to be able to do a lot of task and process for us. So maybe in the past, when people have focused more on their process or their tasks, if AI can do some of that for us, I think the differentiator then becomes how do we connect with other people? And so, as I kind of started Launchpad Leadership, emotional intelligence training is really one of the foundational skills that I'm offering my clients. And really, what that is, Paul, is just thinking about in our day to day, no matter if you're a frontline employee, no matter if you're a CEO, really, no matter what your role is within a company, we're going to get more. We're going to get better results. We're going to get more out of the people that work for us if we have the ability to connect with them, to communicate and build trust with them quickly, to read people and understand maybe when something's off or maybe there's a difficult conversation that needs to be had. And how do I go about giving feedback and coaching in a way that really makes people feel inspired and empowered instead of demeaned and shut down? So I think those are the skills that are really going to help differentiate us as we move into this new world where technology is doing more and more for us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm with you there because I think the environment is this whole AI environment is creating a lot of fear and uncertainty, right?
Yep.
And this way you can be proactive and create, especially if you have an organization with numerous employees, et cetera, where you can say, we're taking and leading with this and we want to be prepared for it. And because I think it's at the point where that technology, in a lot of ways, is going to affect us in all realms of life. So
Yep.
let's try and manage this, and take these things on as they come at us, right? And they're
Right.
coming fairly rapidly right now.
Yeah.
So you're right. There's a whole emotional thing that goes on, and fear and et cetera. Am I going to lose my job or whatever the case may be? So this proactive approach that you're talking about really seems to me to give a calmness to that,
Mhm.
and allow them to take control of the future that they
Yeah.
have. And in my business, I've looked at it and said, okay, there's so many new apps, and
Mhm.
it can take and do this function and this function, and then how do you select which company has the right thing for you to use, and that for each department you have, or whatever applies to. And that's a daunting task, and that requires a lot of your employees' input and research, all right, and those type of things, to make the right decision, because you don't want to be on the wrong horse down the road, right? And
Right.
and end up at a dead end, or that company goes bankrupt or whatever. So I see it somewhat like the .com boom that we went through,
Mhm.
where there were so many things going on, so many choices, so many things to invest in, and so. Well, that's awesome. I appreciate that part of it. And so, in the emotional intelligence, what do you offer as far as services, and give us a little more detail about how that works, and some
Yeah.
of the results maybe you've seen from applying that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to kind of a well-rounded approach, I guess, to emotional intelligence, there's three things that I offer that I have seen work really well when combined together. The first one is an EQI assessment. So I am certified to both deliver and debrief the EQI 360. For anyone that's unfamiliar, it is a very simple, easy to understand assessment that really gives us a great snapshot into our own assessment of our emotional intelligence, how we show up, how we interact with others, how we handle stress, which is a big one, I think, for a lot of us,
Yes.
how we handle change. So this assessment is a self-assessment, but then it also allows us to send it out to the people that we work with, to our family members, to our friends, to really get a 360 view on how we show up to others. And I think always starting with that assessment is really, really helpful, because sometimes we have blind spots. I think that's really normal that we maybe think of ourselves a certain way, and we may be accurate, but oftentimes what I find is there are some blind spots. And so I typically recommend starting with the EQI 360. And once we do that, we can get that done relatively quickly. And I debrief it with people. We walk through the results together so that there's no misinterpretation of what the report says. And I think that is a great place to start, because that really tells us what are the areas that we want to do maybe some focused training or coaching. So kind of my three-prong approach is assess, train, reinforce. So we start with the assessment. We offer some training. And what I am kind of proud of, Paul, that I will say is when I was in the corporate world, got lots and lots of positive feedback on the type of training that I do. So I am not one of those theoretical, let me throw a bunch of theories and facts at you as you listen to a lecture. That's not how people learn. That's not how people grow. So I'm very much a hands-on, practical. Everything we teach or train, you can go out and use immediately. So there is no, well, I don't really know what that means or how I'm supposed to use it. It's no. Let's roll up our sleeves and really figure out how can you take what we learned from this assessment and what we learn in the training and go and apply it right away. So things like managing our stress. So I think that's a big one. When I think of emotional intelligence, I think of awareness of our triggers. What are the things that I know are going to set me off based on past experience or my own personality? How does my DISC style come into play? So I also incorporate DISC quite frequently, the behavioral style, communication style training. That really allows me to understand how I show up naturally in my communication style. And then we take the disc and the triggers and we talk about, okay, what are some practical things you can do to manage your own emotions and stress effectively? Then we pivot that to how do I recognize stress in others through body language, tone, how they show up, and then how do I help? I call it getting your markers back. So we use this kind of fun analogy, if you will, of when we're stressed and we move into that fight or flight response, we lose our markers, which means my thinking brain is not in control. My reactive brain is in control, and that's not how we want to show up typically. That's when we tend to say or do things that we might later wish we had not. So
Yes.
trying to get people to, and it's not realistic to never lose your markers, right? We're going to have stress. We're going to have things that throw us off. We're human. So it's not realistic to never lose your markers. It is, however, realistic to get your markers back quickly and to recognize when other people have lost them and help other people get their markers back. So through my whole emotional intelligence training, we talk a lot about that. And again, we give practical things people can do, from breathing exercises to mindset techniques to kind of our internal storytelling, our internal dialogue that we tell ourselves and how powerful that is. So all of those things kind of come into play when we talk about emotional intelligence. And then that third prong is reinforce, which is really ongoing coaching. So what I have found very helpful and successful with other clients is after we assess with the diagnostic, we get a good idea of kind of what the strengths and opportunities are. We offer some very focused training with practical tools. And then we do a cadence of coaching. Maybe it's a 3-month coaching session. Maybe it's 6 months, depending on what the employee or what the person desires. But really, it's about helping them day in and day out reinforce some of that training in a way that fits into their daily life. And so that's really kind of an approach that I have seen work really well. I rolled this out at the software company that I was with, and got really, really strong feedback, but also we were Great Place to Work certified with very high scores in people interacting with others, which is really the emotional intelligence piece and the communication piece. So I've seen the results firsthand. And as I've kind of branched out on my own, the few clients we've done this with so far in my 7 months out on my own it's been very, very well received.
Very good. Very good. And some of these things, like we talked about, I think we've talked about this previously. Do you remember that old study that GE did, the lighting study? Did we talk about that?
Yeah, we did.
And
Yep.
yeah, and it was just that the fact, it wasn't necessarily the lighting was the problem at the factory. It was the fact that the employees needed attention, and they liked the attention, and it caused them to work, more proficiently and
Yeah.
more efficiently. So a lot of this has to do with that, just being connected. I
Yep.
think from the leadership, corporate leadership, down to the employee level, whatever that is, whatever the structure is, that type of thing. So as you've worked with these various clients that you said there's like 7 clients so far that you've worked with in this particular realm. What have you seen like as follow-up? Have they done long-term follow-up with you? Does it seem like the coaching, because obviously you're going to have maybe some employee turnover. You're going to have,
Mhm.
so you've got to have people that have no awareness coming in that know what's going on. How have you dealt with that?
Yeah, well, since I've only been out doing my own thing for 7 months, I don't have long-term results per se yet, but I
Sure.
will say that a part of the coaching that we do is action items every week. So again, we want to measure, right? Are we making improvements? Are we moving forward? I just wrapped up a 9 session with 3 different employees at a manufacturing company where we really coached and talked a lot about these skills that I'm sharing with you. And every week they had action items, and they would have to come back and report on, did they do the action item? How did it go? So I think that's a great way to see kind of some of those short-term milestones that we're moving in the right direction. And one of the ways that we've been able to measure it is this company that I was working with, they were doing stay interviews. Are you familiar with those? Have you heard of those
Uh,
before?
Define that. I'm not sure I do.
Yeah, I think it's actually a great idea. And I think some companies do it. I don't know how many companies do it. But instead of interviewing someone when they resign and going, hey, what could we have done differently? Why are you leaving? Stay interviews are periodic touch points just to get a pulse on the culture and how employees are feeling about their job and the company. So this particular company that I've been working with that I was coaching, the three gentlemen, they do stay interviews. And one of the best things that we saw through this coaching is that before we started coaching, and one of the reasons we started coaching was because two of the three had received negative stay interviews from their employees. They had reported things like, my manager doesn't listen to me. My manager tends to blow up when they're under stress. My manager tends to kind of operate more like a dictator at times. This was the type of feedback that they were getting. So what's interesting is through our it was 9 sessions, but it went longer than 9 weeks just because of vacations and things like that. So it's probably around 3 months total that we were working together. And we wrapped up our last session last week, and the two individuals that had given negative stay interviews had just been reassessed, and the feedback was much, much more positive. And so we do attribute a lot of that to focused energy on consistently applying what we had talked about, right? And a big part of that is just having the awareness of recognizing when you are triggered. So when something upsets you or frustrates you, in that moment, recognizing and using the techniques to get yourself into a better spot before responding. So that's a big part of, I think, where I've seen a lot of growth in some of the clients that I've worked with is when you have focused training and focused coaching on it, it brings that awareness level up, and there's more daily reminders internally of using and applying some of the skills that we had talked about. So I was really happy to see that in a matter of, less than 3 months, they had made some significant improvements in those areas based on the employees' feedback themselves.
Very good. Very good. Are you also finding that when you do the DISC profile, that's helping them kind of self-discover
Yes.
their own, weaknesses and strengths, et cetera, and reaction points with that? Talk about that a little bit. How is the DISC fit into that whole process, or is it
Yeah.
part of it?
For some clients, I mean, really, the client gets to choose, right? So if anybody wants to work with me, we sit down and we do kind of a full discussion on what the gaps are, what the needs are, and we really try to kind of take a tailored approach based on the needs of the organization and the people. So I think that's important. It's not a one size fits all for everybody. However, I do strongly recommend incorporating DISC because for anybody that's not aware, and DISC has been around for a really long time, there's also many different kind of variations of it out there.
Hmm.
What I like about DISC is that it's very easy to understand and it's easy to use, in my opinion. And I think a lot of people would agree if you've had exposure to it. So why I like to recommend DISC is because we all have kind of what I would call a homeostasis of how we communicate. So typically, all of us are either more high assertive by nature or low assertive by nature. And we're either more emotion high, like people oriented, or more fact and process oriented. So DISC really allows us to kind of easily identify what our natural tendencies are, and then to be able to read other people so that we can adapt. So I'll just give you an example. I am an ID. So I's and D's are both high assertive. So I will pretty much always be high assertive regardless of the situation, which means I don't mind sharing my opinion or my thoughts on something. I'll just readily put it out there. Someone who's lower assertive will share their opinion or thoughts when they feel it's safe to do so. So they might hang back a little bit more. They might have to kind of assess the room. They're going to share when they feel there's a high trust to do so, not just readily share their opinion to anybody and everybody. So knowing that I'm a high assertive, I have to, if I walk into a situation where it's predominantly a lot of low assertive individuals, I have to temper that. I have to bring that assertiveness down, or it could, really be seen as a negative to those individuals. Since I'm a high I, I'm also very people emotion oriented. If I'm talking to someone that's very detail and process oriented, I need to shift a little bit of my talk track to be less about people and emotion and more about facts and data. So we offer simple things people can do, like again, real practical things that people can do to both identify someone's disc style, but also to better communicate with those people. And I'm a huge advocate of disc. I still attribute it. I had a really good sales career when I was selling back in pharmaceuticals, and I still attribute a big part of my success to disc. Because once I went through that training, it really shifted how I interacted with my customers. And I've seen firsthand as both a salesperson and a leader how impactful it can be. So yeah, I try to encourage my clients to consider it. We do very inexpensive assessments for DISC. And again, that includes a debrief to really understand the results. So always happy to talk more about DISC. But yeah, I do believe that that goes very nicely hand in hand with the emotional intelligence work.
Very good, very good. Yes, and I came aware of DISC. I think it was 2001 when I was the vice president of the Project Management Institute in Nebraska, and they brought in a speaker to talk about that, and it was so fun to kind of self-discover what that's the other piece that I think of DISC is certainly to find out more about yourself. Everybody's interested in that, and it makes it fun to kind of go, oh yeah, that's why I do all these things, right?
Right,
This
right.
is why I react with people or whatever, et
Yeah.
cetera. So you can kind of laugh about it in that environment and kind of go, well, yeah, those weaknesses I need to understand, and the other person's my opposite. I think I told you this story before, but during that time when we took that assessment, I was the vice president on my staff for that position. I had another gentleman, his name was Paul as well, and we became good friends through that. And he took that assessment, and I was his exact opposite,
Mm.
right? So I'm a high DI as well, and he's an SC. And he said, well, this relationship isn't going to last very long. And I said, oh, to the contrary, because I need you to help me navigate what's going on here because I will blow through this like a bull in a china shop and
Yep.
uh, it won't get done properly unless I have you there. And then more recently I had discovered, I think I talked to you about that book Rocket Fuel.
Hmm.
Had you read that before?
I had not, no.
Okay, and did we talked a little bit about it, I think, didn't we?
Refresh my memory though. Yeah, it's been a few months since you
Sure.
and I talked about that.
So I think this is helpful in the world you're working in is that Rocket Fuel is a whole thing by Gino Wickman that it revolves around what they call the entrepreneurial operating system. But bottom line is Rocket Fuel is anybody that you see out there that's been very successful is not working alone, right?
Mhm.
Normally, and the whole idea behind it is there's a visionary, and then there's also the one that executes the vision, right? Okay, and they call that the integrator in that book. It's called the integrator for terms. And so the two together, because vision doesn't get you anywhere unless it's
Right.
implemented, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
it has to have an implementation through an integrator, and that's that whole thing. That is an amazing revelation to
Yeah.
discover that
Have to get
and
that
work through
book.
that. So it's pretty exciting. And he has some follow up uh, books to that. One's called Traction: How to Actually Put It into Action once you've got your goals and your vision set for things, et cetera, and how to do the human resources side of things as well. So. Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm excited to hear a little bit more about. You also do some keynote speaking. Am I thinking right on some of these? Have
Yeah,
you
so
done some?
that is part of my offering. I actually have not done any of that yet, but I have my first one on January 14th. So
Oh, exciting,
yeah,
exciting.
yeah. But yeah, I'm absolutely able to do keynote speaking as well. One of the things that might be helpful for people, and again, I don't know how widely this name is known. He is nationally recognized as one of the top speakers and authors in the world, but John Maxwell. If your listeners are familiar with John Maxwell, he's been around for many, many years. He's written, I think, over 90 books, many New York
Yes. Hmm.
best-selling books. And back in March, I went through the John Maxwell training, coaching, and keynote speaking certification. So I do have a lot of great resources at my fingertips through my John Maxwell Association. So yes, if anyone's looking for a keynote or a some specific training anchored in some of those well-known and highly vetted leadership books from John Maxwell, I'm also able to do that as well. One thing that popped in my head, Paul, while you were talking, and I just wanted to circle back to it when you were talking about books, I got to thinking about, some of the books that have really made a difference to me. And
Yes.
one that has really shaped my desire to focus on emotional intelligence so much is The Happiness Advantage by Sean Acor. So have you read that one?
No. Does that relate anything to somebody recently I've been seeing on YouTube talking about the inner smile? Have you heard about this?
It's probably very similar. Now, I don't think
Okay.
The Inner Smile is from that book. This book is, it's over a decade old, but
Okay. Yeah.
it's
Tell me about that.
it's
What's
still
it
one of my
talk
favorites.
about?
Yeah. So the whole premise of The Happiness Advantage is that we get caught up in a false narrative, which is external circumstances drive our happiness. And the data, and this is a great book for people who like science and data, because I think sometimes when we talk about happiness and gratitude, people go, oh, that's the foo-foo stuff. Actually, it's not. It's the essential stuff. That's why I hate it when people say soft skills training. I'm always like, no, it's essential skills training.
Yeah. Yeah.
These aren't soft skills, these are essential skills. But the research shows, and there's many examples when you look across different examples of this, but research shows that 90% of our long-term happiness is really derived from how we perceive and overcome obstacles. If I look at obstacles and challenges as a defeat, the world's out to get me, I'm a victim, this is terrible, then I'm going to be miserable, like straight up.
Yep.
But
Yep.
if I look at a challenge or an obstacle or even a failure as an opportunity to learn and grow, and I truly approach it with that mindset, then I'm going to be much happier. Studies show that happy people are 31% more productive, right? So, and he also talks about this concept of your circle of control. And that's another thing that I incorporate into my training that I actually just did as well with these three gentlemen I was coaching, is this concept of your circle of control. Because where a lot of us go sideways and we get unhappy, we're angry, we're frustrated, we're kind of living in this defeatist mindset, it's when we're focused on all of these things that are outside of my control, right? I get caught up in what somebody else should or shouldn't be doing. I get caught up in a political thing. I get caught up in any number of things that are outside of my circle of control. And then I live in what I call this red X world. All this negative red X is what I'm spending my mental energy focused on. So the circle of control is another great exercise that I teach that's really simple for people to do. It's making a list. In fact, I have mine right here. My
You have
circle
the
of
list
control.
right
I
there.
have my list. I keep it right on my window so I can see it. But the circle of control is refocusing what do I have within my power every day to be happy, productive, and accomplish my goals. And this is a really good exercise for people because if somebody sits down with a pen and they're like, I don't have anything, I don't control anything, that tells you right there kind of the mindset that they're in. So it's very easy when you just sit and let your brain open to the concept. It's very easy to quickly make a list of 20, 30, 40 things because within our circle of control is how prepared we are for meetings, being on time for things, having a positive attitude and smiling at people, making eye contact, following up promptly, actively listening, right? Putting aside the distractions and tuning into people, asking good questions to learn from people, reading books, watching TED Talks, right? Setting a goal for that, taking care of myself, drinking water, exercising, eating healthy. For me, my faith is very important to me. So time in prayer, time in the word. I have a long list of things that I have absolute control over every day that I can do to keep myself in a good mind, in a good headspace, and to help accomplish my goals. And when I do this exercise in my training, we do the circle of control, and then we take it one step further and we make a list of, okay, there's a lot of things you can't control, but you have a tremendous amount of influence over. So now let's make a list of things that you can positively influence. So when I can focus on my circle of control and my influence, I don't have any mental energy left to focus on all the negative things outside of my control. And this is one area that I think is really, really critical. And every time I teach any kind of leadership development, I almost beg the leaders to do this exercise with their teams. Because I hear so much as I'm out working, not only in the corporate world as an employee, but out on my own in this position, you just hear so many people getting caught up in what they believe other people should or shouldn't be doing. And it wastes a tremendous amount of productivity for organizations. And so by leaders proactively saying, let's do our circle of control, post it on your monitor, post it somewhere where you can see it. And every day, that is what you focus on. And if you focus on this, you're going to be happy. You're going to be in a positive mindset. You're going to be in a learning mindset. You're going to be working towards your goals. You don't have time to worry about what other people are or aren't doing because you're very focused on you being the best you in how you show up. So that is one exercise that I always try to do in my leadership training. And I have found it to be very, very powerful and very simple. It doesn't take a lot of effort or energy to do this exercise. But when managers take it upon themselves to, like in a one-on-one with an employee, I want you to do this ahead of time. Let's come and let's talk about it. It's very eye-opening for leaders because if my employee has one or two things written down and they're sitting there with their arms crossed, like, well, I don't have any control over anything. And, I'm just here showing up. That tells you right there the kind of mindset that they're in. They're in that red X mindset, right? So then what do we do to kind of get them back into a positive mindset? We do the circle of control. We celebrate small wins. We catch them doing something right. We give them tools to help them kind of change their mindset as well.
Very good. That's excellent. And some of that touches into just boundaries, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a matter of, okay, am I allowing other people to control my attitude, my what I do, and that type of thing? And of course, we have important people in our lives, and you can't separate your family life from your business life in
Right.
most cases because it's going to affect that severely, or either in a good way or a bad way, or tremendously, I should say. And so that's very important. So yeah, it's good to hear those things from the employees, both from what's going on at work and what's going on in the rest of their world,
Yeah.
their private world, and that type of thing. So I think I mentioned this to you before, but when I read the book in the '90s by Henry Cloud and John Townsend, the Boundaries
Boundary.
book, that
Mhm.
changed my life forever.
Yeah.
That when to say yes, when to say no, and when to get control or how to get control of my life was a huge thing. Because if you're a pleasing type personality and you want to try and make everybody happy,
Mm-hmm.
you will be unhappy because you can't do that, right?
Right.
So it's not within your realm of control, right?
Right.
So
Yeah. Well, and that also is a great segue into something else that I've had a lot of success teaching and training is crucial conversations. So if
oh
anyone
yes.
had the book, it's a very again, it stood the test of time over many, many years. But I'm also certified to teach that content. And I think, again, just looking at today's environment, Paul, with how, if we look at the generations that are working together, and they're working together virtually too, by the way, which adds a whole nother level of complexity. But
Yes.
we have different generations, some of which maybe are more tell it like it is, get over it, pull up your bootstraps and just do what you got to do. And then there's maybe some generational tendencies to avoid conflict or, let's be honest, people in their early 20s, late teens, they have grown up texting and sending emojis, right? Like that's just how it is. That's how they
Yep.
have communicated. I see this with my own stepson, who's 23. He was working for my husband when my husband had a landscaping business, and he would be with my husband all day in the truck, not say a word, get in the car and send a text that he wasn't going to be there the next day, because he didn't want to have the confrontation, right? He didn't want to have.
Oh, wow.
So I've seen a lot of, and I'm not saying it's just that generation, by the way. I think this is a
Sure,
challenge
sure.
across the board, but I do think with the younger generation growing up with texting and emojis and those types of things just being the norm of communication, it does make it more challenging to have a difficult conversation face to face. And especially if you have, again, different generational approaches on what good looks like around that, right? Growing up, my dad would have said, get over yourself. You don't like it, too bad. This is what you signed up for. Shake it off, right? Like that was the tough conversation maybe for that generation. So it's going to look different depending on kind of how we were raised, what we're comfortable with, and our disc style too really ties into that. But I think
Yes.
that's another skill that can really differentiate companies today, teaching your employees how to handle conflict effectively, how to give each other feedback effectively, both positive and constructive, right? How do I tell somebody I need more from you? How do I tell somebody the way we're doing this isn't ideal? And how do I do it with facts and without it being a personal attack? And so those are some other skills that I think are really critical in today's environment, especially with so much being done virtually, so much being done via email or Teams or Slack. People are much more bold when they aren't face to face with someone than they would be if they are face to face with someone. So sometimes we say things over email that can really do some collateral damage, but we probably wouldn't have said it that way if I was face to face to that person, right? So it's bridging some of those gaps. How do I be honest? How do I be professional? How do I say what needs to be said so that we can increase productivity and improve trust, but do it in a way that really is doable for people. It doesn't feel too heavy, too hard. And that's what I love about Crucial Conversations is it really gives people some strong framework and tips on how to have those types of conversations effectively.
Yeah, and I think I learned this early in life that you need to have short accounts, right? And meaning that you need to deal with things
Yes,
while they're small, and otherwise they fester and grow, right,
yes,
over time.
that's exactly
And
right.
you're better off, and there's always that misunderstanding, right, that goes on. And I've had recently a couple of, I would say, contention issues with a couple of people, and it was just a matter of I was just getting it out there in the open, and some people cannot handle that on that level, even when you're face to face. It's very
Yeah,
difficult, and
that's our disc
so,
style, right? Because you're a high assertive. So for that's, I
yep.
think this is a great point, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but I just for
No,
listeners,
it's okay.
this is a
Yeah.
really good point because if you yourself are a high assertive, you're going to be much more comfortable saying something bluntly. But if
Yep.
you're talking to someone who's low assertive, that could really land on them in a way that shuts them down to where they just completely clam up and they're no longer willing to be part of the conversation. So I think that's a great point, Paul, is just understanding when it comes to hard conversations, some of us are wired to maybe lean into those a little bit easier than
Yes.
others. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. And I have to step back, and I allow the Lord to give me a little insight into that. And
Yes.
sometimes I have to just have a cooling off period, if you
Yeah.
will, to be able to go, okay, well, yeah, I came in a little bit too strong there, and that
Yep.
type of thing. And I was correct, but not the right way to do it, right?
Yeah.
And not the right method to approach that there. So I get humbled many times because of that. So, and I ask that question in my life often, is when you're dealing with people, is to say, God, why did you bring this person into my life? Because many times there's purpose there
Hmm.
that is different than, you're in a business relationship, yet there's either maybe a spiritual need or an emotional need that you fulfill in that moment with that person that nobody else would have that opening to do, right?
Right. Absolutely. And that's a
And
great
that,
mindset to think about it, right? Instead of, and again, that goes back to what story am I telling myself? So I want to lean into this a little bit in our conversation because to me, this is probably the most important thing that I have learned. I'd say DISC is number two. This would be number one. Um, the stories we tell ourselves, what we think about, what we watch, what we listen to, what we marinate on matters tremendously. Because if I fill my mind with negativity and darkness and all of these things, then guess what's going to come out of my mouth? Guess what I'm going to be communicating? So, there's definitely a spiritual component to this. The Bible is very clear on be careful what you think about, right? Control of your thoughts,
yes,
submit them to the Lord. And I absolutely lean into that from my faith, but also just on the kind of practical side in the workplace. We will tell ourselves worst case scenario stories. We will make up a story in our minds without knowing the facts. And this, to your point, have short accounts. If we don't get to the truth and get to the clarity quickly, this story can get bigger and bigger and hairier and nastier. And the next thing you know, I've painted this really awful picture of this person when I know this much of the story. I know this much of the facts.
yes, yes,
So what can happen is we assume and we make judgments. So let me just give you an example. Somebody sends you an email at work. You're in a bad mood when you read it. It completely rubs you the wrong way. Now, instead of me going, okay, I'm not going to take that personal. I'm going to wait until I can talk to that person and maybe just ask some questions. Instead, what we do is we go, oh, well, I know why so-and-so sent me that email. They're jealous of me, or they don't like that I just got that promotion, or we tell ourselves this story. And based
right,
on that story, I start to get myself worked up. And then I'm going to respond to that person with the story that I've painted in my own mind versus the facts. We do this all the time in business, all the time. I can't tell you how many people I coached at my prior company who would come to me all upset because somebody sent them an email. And I'd say, okay, well, let's talk about it. Well, they're doing that because of this. And I know da 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 da. And I'm like, okay, are these facts? Like, do you know this for a fact? Well, no, but I'm just, we get ourselves just into this tizzy about things. And so the internal dialogue up here is so critically important. And I have had to work on this a lot. As a high I, I'm naturally a storyteller. I'm a very visual. I paint pictures. It's how my brain works. I know you're the same. So
similar.
especially
Yep.
for us high I's, we can really tell ourselves a crazy story if we let it.
Yeah.
So part of the training that I do too is just helping people with, okay, before we react, before I send off a nasty email to the one I just got, let's take a step back. First of all, let's assume positive intent. So I talk a lot about this in the trainings that I do with companies. Most people have good intentions, right? Now, are there some bad eggs out there? Yes. I'm not going to say 100% of the time, but most of us are trying to do our best every day. We have challenges. We have personal stuff going on. We have no idea what other people are going through. So sometimes I may not show up as good as I want, but most of us are trying to do our best every day. So if I go into a situation assuming positive intent, I'm much more likely to not go worst case scenario, not make the worst assumption. But if I come into my day with my dukes up like everybody's out to get me, then I'm going to be much more defensive with people. And again, these are simple things that can truly be game changers if we have some awareness and some understanding of it. Because I really do think, Paul, and we talked about AI in the beginning. One thing that AI will never replace because it can't is human to human connection. God created us
Mhm.
as humans to need each other. You said it earlier. We should not go it alone, right? We need each other. We should be leaning on each other. God
Yep.
created us that way. So as fancy as AI gets, it can't replace human to human connection because it's not human. Now, there's a lot of things it can do, and there's a lot of things that it will replace, but it can't replace human to human connection. So those are the type of skills I think people really need to lean into. And part of it is not telling ourselves this worst case scenario story when something happens, but instead assuming positive intent and then asking myself, okay, what information do I need to better understand what might be going on here? I think that's a great question we can ask ourselves. Just by asking ourselves that question, I get myself a little bit calmer and I start thinking about, okay, so Sally just sent me what I interpreted as a nasty email. Let me assume positive intent from Sally. What else might be going on here? Well, maybe she's under a lot of stress. Maybe she has a deadline that she's, trying to meet. Maybe she sent me that email because she's having a really bad day. So before I attack Sally, let me set up a meeting with her and just say, hey, I interpreted the email this way. I don't think that was your intent. Can we talk a little bit more about what you were trying to communicate? So those are the types of conversations we should be having, but a lot of times we don't because we're busy and we just move on to the next thing and we let this dialogue continue to play like we've got it on repeat. And it
Yes.
can really do some damage when it comes to how we communicate with each other at work and in our personal lives.
That's a great that's a great thought. And I was thinking as you were working through that, going all the way back to early corporate training, like in the late 80s, early 90s, we always talked about the fact that when you're communicating either face to face or basically over the phone verbally, that those inflections of your voice, all those tonal qualities, all those things,
Yep.
all of those communicate like 75% of what you're trying to say, right? It's the words are part
Yep.
of it. So now we've gotten to the point where the pendulum has swung all the way over where, oh, it's old school to make a phone call, we just text and whatever, and that type of thing. I think the pendulum needs to swing back the
Yeah.
other way where we are spending more time talking to each other, and let the AI do the tasks that a
Yeah.
robot needs to do, right?
Right.
And then we have more time to put into the relationship at
Yes,
that
that's
point,
so well
right?
summarized. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
always reference the study. I think it's out of UCLA. And again, it's several decades old, but the one you're referring to, 55% of how people interpret what we're saying is through our body language.
Yep.
38% is tone of voice and 7% is words. So if I'm just sending text to someone, they're going to interpret that based on whatever mood they're in or whatever's going on in their life at that moment. So I really don't allow myself to be expressed because text and writing doesn't have necessarily a tone to it. Now, if I put a lot of all caps and exclamation points, I can assume tone, but really it's that connection. It's the eye contact. It's the being fully present with someone. It's a tone of curiosity, not judgment or demeaning or condescending. People pick up on that very quickly. And when I do my communication training, I talk a lot about that. I could be saying the exact same thing right now on our podcast, but if I'm leaned back in my chair with my arms crossed the whole time, the viewer is going to get a totally different perception and experience. So these are the kind of things that are really important for us to think about. And I think it's definitely part of leadership training. But what I encourage companies to do is really think about how can you give your employee base the same language and the same tools? Because I think we're more powerful when everybody has the same language. So if everybody understands how to have a difficult conversation, if everybody understands how to build trust, everybody understands disc style, these things can really be exponential game changers for companies because you have a common language and a common skill set involving people skills. And no matter what, nothing gets done without people to some degree.
Right. That's
So,
right.
yeah.
And that's awesome. Let's talk a little bit about the Launchpad leadership. your company, if you will, and your future. So I'd love to know a couple of things. First of all, I'd love to know for 2026, what are some of your goals that you've got? I know you're a goal setter. I know, and I know you've got a plan going. So what are your goals for Launchpad Leadership going into 2026? What are you seeing?
Yeah, no, that's great. So my first 7 months in this with this company, and again, I'm the owner, the operator, the trainer, the coach right now. I'm a party of
Yep.
one at the time. My vision probably in the next 3 years is to grow and to add a team. I don't know if that'll happen in 2026, but so far, all of the business that I've gotten has been through my personal network. So I want to say that because again, I'm talking about the importance of connecting with people and relationships. And I have seen firsthand how God has blessed the business through my ability to connect and bond with people and to help people feel seen and heard. That has opened doors to where in full transparency, I haven't had to do a lot of outreach because God has opened the doors for people who I've had strong connections and relationships with, or maybe I've helped them in the past. This is kind of a fun story, real quick. When I don't know if I should say names of companies, but when I was with the pharmaceutical company I worked at for 18 years, it was dermatology products. And I did a leadership class there. And I had a lady named Kathy that came through my leadership class. And then I was doing some coaching with her. Now, mind you, this was 20 years ago, maybe 22 years ago. She saw on LinkedIn that I had started my own business. She sent me an email like 2 months ago. I haven't talked to her in 20 years, by the way.
Wow.
Sent me an email like 2 months ago, said, "Hey, Lisa, it's Kathy. I wanted to introduce you to our HR team here at my company because I've never forgotten how much you helped me." Because she was a new leader. When she went through the training and the coaching with me 20 years ago, she was a brand new leader. And she said, "I've never forgotten how impactful the training and the coaching that you did with me was. I've carried that through in all the other jobs that I've had. And when I saw that you were doing your own thing, I want you to come help us at our company." So I
How
was like, that is
sweet.
so cool, right? So I actually
Yeah.
I'm in conversations now with them to do some leadership development training in 2026. But kind of going back to your question, since I am right now just a one person business, I have to be realistic with my goals. But my maybe a better way to answer that is, who is my target customer? Who do I want to help? So in
Yes.
2026, obviously, I'd love to continue building my business through my network. But what I really would love is to help the small to mid-sized business who doesn't have the big internal HR team. They don't have leadership development. They don't have sales training. They don't have infrastructure to help them do some of these things well. Now, if they do have infrastructure, I'm still happy to come alongside and support. But really, my passion and the reason I started this business, quite honestly, Paul, is for that small to mid-sized business owner who wants to invest in their people. They want to do all the stuff we've been talking about, but they don't know where to start. They don't have any internal resources to help. And they're really looking for somebody who can come in and say, "Help me figure out what we need and how to do it affordably and practically, given my small business." So my goal in 2026 is to really try to identify, I would say, 5 to 10 small to mid-sized businesses that I can truly be a partner for them. I'd really rather come alongside a few companies and be a long-term partner in helping them accomplish their goals than to be a one-time in and out type of vendor.
Yep.
So ideally, I'd like to find kind of in the Branson, Springfield, Northwest Arkansas area, 5 to 10 companies that I can really help and that they're looking to do a lot of the stuff we've been talking about today and they just don't know where to start. So that's my vision. And when I was with my past company, we did something called the Connect Conference, and our customer base was the small to mid-sized business.
Uh,
And at this Connect Conference, I would do leadership training, communication skills training, emotional intelligence training. And every year that we did that, I would have several companies come up to me afterwards and say, "Oh, could you come do this at our company? We don't have any of this. Like, we're desperate for stuff like this." So that's what really got me thinking many years ago about starting this business, because I saw firsthand how there was a need, there was a desire for it. But if you think about a lot of the businesses that you and I work with and that we're surrounded by, they care about this stuff. They really do want to develop their people. But if I don't have a big HR team, or if I don't have an internal leadership development team, it can really be overwhelming to think
It can.
about where to even start. Like, they don't even know, right? So that's really my goal, is to find those, 5 to 10 partnerships that I can come alongside and really try to help them accomplish their goals in developing their people, and really set up an infrastructure where everybody at their organization knows how to communicate effectively, knows how to handle stress management effectively, knows how to build trust with other departments. And again, going back to kind of some of these essential skills that really are going to differentiate companies moving forward.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, how would someone engage with you? What's the best way to engage with you, as far as I'm sure people are going to be interested in finding out more about your services and that type of thing? What's the best approach for them to get a
Yeah.
hold of you?
Yeah, so there's many options. So if you go to LinkedIn, if you happen to be on LinkedIn, you can find me
Okay.
at Lisa Armstrong or Launchpad Leadership. So if you just go to my LinkedIn page, I have over 20 recommendations from people that have worked directly with me. So if you're somebody that likes to see what other clients say, I have a
Yeah.
lot of good feedback on my LinkedIn page. So I would recommend that. You can also email me. So I have a few different emails, but the easiest one is info. And I don't know if we type these things, Paul, or if we just say them, but info@launchpad-leadership.com
Okay.
is one of my email addresses. And I do have a digital business card. I'm not sure if there's a way we can get that to people, but I do have a QR code with all of my information that we
Okay.
can provide as well.
Okay. That's awesome. And I'm sorry, did I miss it? Is there a landing page website or
Oh,
at this
yes,
point
yes.
or not?
And my website is still under construction, I will say. So it's
Okay.
not fully vetted out. But yes, it is launchpad-leadership.com.
Uh, okay. Launchpad-leadership.com,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Very good. Very good. Awesome. It's always great to talk with you on this subject, and I'm looking forward to promoting you in this business. And thank you so much for being on the Leverage podcast today. I appreciate it, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And it's been great to have this conversation with you, and look forward to continuing to work with you, Paul. Thanks so much.
Same here. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.